arrest.
I suggest you back the fuck up. No.
This is Baltimore City Police Officer Jorge Bernardes Ruiz. In a newly released video shot in 2016, Ruiz is seen with his knee on the back of an unknown man with a gun pointed at the man's head. His message was a clear one: concerned onlookers, adhere to my dictates or else. Here, we can hear Ruiz saying to Baltimore residents,
I suggest you back the fuck up. No.
It is documented that Baltimore police officer Jorge Bernardes Ruiz is a repeat violent offender, even without access to all complaints against Ruiz, undisclosed by BPD Internal Affairs records. 6 cases involving Ruiz are known. This video will briefly highlight 6 total cases beginning in July of 2013. Case 1, Abdul Salam, July 1st, 2013. Here Salam is seen victoriously smiling in celebration after the jury found Ruiz and 2 other cops liable for brutality against him. However, because the trial was civil, not criminal, Ruiz was not fired and he did not go to jail.
Police profiled me. They followed me in the back of my house, harassing me. Police proceeded to violently and hostilely approach my van with me and my son in it. As I announced this was my home, guns drawn. Once they reached my vehicle, they violently pulled me out, ramshacked my vehicle with my 3-year-old son strapped in his car seat, threw me against the gate, slammed me repeatedly.
Picked me up by my feet, and while I'm upside down, they proceeded to drop me on my head, hog-tied me, and immediately when I fell on my head, Ruiz, in a wrestling type of action, and kind of hit my knee, his knee against my neck.
I was arrested. I had no idea what I was being arrested for. My son is scarred to this day. He remembers the incident as it happened yesterday. When he talks about it, he always refers to Daddy being on the floor with police yesterday.
Case 2, Darrell Harris, profiled, as seen in this video, July 17th, 2013.
Yeah, see it. What's wrong with it? There's no such thing as improper way. I know the law. I know the law. I know the law. What's the problem? You giving me a ticket? You need my license registration? To profile, I use the seatbelt as a ranger. Profile.
Give me 30, take out your keys.
Yeah, you can record for what? Nah. I don't feel safe right now. Do you want me to step out the car? Do you want me to step out the car? I'll step out the car. Call the police, man. What are you calling supervisor? I'm talking your shit. This is getting uploaded to the internet right now. Yeah?
And we are 2 law-abiding citizens that we are getting targeted, and I don't know why.
Just 24 hours later, Bernardes Ruiz played a leading role in the police killing of unarmed Tyrone West. Case number 3, the murder of Tyrone West, July 18th, 2013.
My brother Tyrone West was brutally murdered on July the 18th, 2013.
In both of these cases, when you look at the pleadings and the harsh language of these officers that have been quoted to me by reliable witnesses, the N-word.
And Killer Ruiz and Killer Chapman and the rest of those 11 to 15 killers, including David Lewis, took something from my family that they can never give us again. And that was my brother Tyrone West, one unarmed man who was brutally murdered, beat to death in broad daylight.
And Mr. West begging for his life, and Mr. Salam to be excluded and comforted from what was taking place, not for his 3-year-old child.
Case number 4, Adina Britt and family, September 10th.
My name is Adina Britt, and I wanted to submit a 30-second testimonial that Jorge Omar Bernardes Ruiz is one of the 11 terrorists that came into my house performing a home invasion in September 2015, terrorizing my entire, even holding my 12-year-old son at gunpoint. He needs to be stopped.
Case number 5. Unidentified arrestee, assaulted in 2016. Again, this video did not surface until the summer of 2020. Case 6, Thomas McCullough, May 2016 and February 2017.
I heard my front door coming off the hinges, like it exploded.
Thomas McCullough says it happened twice. In May 2016 and February 2017, Baltimore City Police burst through his green front door and raided his Pimlico home.
They said, police. They come up, shotguns, guns.
He says officers ransacked the place, looking for drugs, money, and weapons. He took pictures of the damage he says they left behind.
Tell us where the drugs are, the scales, the guns, and the large amounts of money.
Nothing was found. Now he's suing police, claiming officers, including a former member of the Gun Trace Task Force, frightened him, his wife, and father-in-law when the officers conducted what his suit calls an illegal search of his home. The owner of the house tells 11 News after the second raid, he had to replace the front door. McCullough and his attorney say they want Baltimore police held accountable.
There is a colossal breach of trust.
And McCullough tells us following both raids, no one was arrested or charged.
This all begs the question, when will Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby see the prosecution of Bernardez Ruiz as warranted?
They were the stopping officers in these so-called jump-out cars, unmarked and so forth, that stopped both the West vehicle and the Salon vehicle without probable cause. And these officers are the ones that also were joined by others, but they are the ones who initiated the stops, pulled both men out of the vehicles, and commenced the vicious activity that was thrust upon them.
And the officer Ruiz that started this attack is still promotions. He is now sergeant. But the fact that this repeat violent offender had a history leading up to my brother. There was Darrell Harris, there was James Green, Joseph Green, Abdul Salam, and my sister Dina and her family. No one family deserves to be brutally murdered or brutalized by this repeat violent offender Ruiz. It is time we take action. The time is now.
Baltimore police officer Jorge Bernardez Ruiz is a repeat violent offender. Based on these accounts, in accordance with the law, we, the West Coalition, call for him to be fired, prosecuted, and incarcerated.
We're more than hashtags and body bags. We're more than X. We're more than being 6 feet in the dirt and pictures and buttons on t-shirts. Our lives matter.
The prevention of further harm, and the justice for these families, we see no other option.
And again, I'll say, damn.
Mic check, mic check. This is West Wednesday, number 378. For 378 straight Wednesdays, Tawanda Jones, sister of Tyrone West, has been fighting for his justice and for justice for all victims of police brutality. That members of the West Coalition, and will be released on our social media pages later on this week. Stay tuned to the West Wednesday pages on Facebook and Twitter to watch that video again. Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
So thank you, Brother Ben, and thank you guys for tuning in to West Wednesday. Like my brother Ben just said, this is week 378, day 2,646. So for non-stop weeks and days, we've been fighting for account. Saw in that video, this is a real video. Something needs to be done. Like, no one is safe while he is currently working. He is a ticking time bomb ready to go off. So sharing it again on our social media platforms. But the special guest as we always have, and I'm honored tonight that we have my brother Seifu. He couldn't make it off of work last week, but he's definitely in queue, as well as my royal queen sister Erica, who has been fighting not only for accountability for her son that was 16 years old that had a loaded handgun pulled on him. Literally, she's not only just fighting for him, but she's fighting for all the victims of police brutality and murder. Then we're gonna also have our warrior sister, Dr. Cheryl Crocker. She's gonna be joining us a little later, and then we a little bit. And I'm gonna ask you, brother Ben, is Ken Q yet?
Say that again.
Do you see brother Ken Q yet?
Yep, he's here.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring him on first because he has to go. He has another event, and this brother wears a lot of crowns, especially after being an ex law enforcement officer. So he knows how it is. A good officer, because good officers, if you see something, you say something, and you do something. And for him to be able to come and always join with us and give us his expertise that he brings to the table is fabulous. I'm like loving it. It's like I always told you guys, I'm not anti-police. I'm anti-police brutality. That's the difference. It's just really sad. So we're in a time that we're past like all these. We're past that. If anybody's still seeing on the news think that it's a few bad apples, then I don't know what to say. It's a few good. It's a few good apples that are still hanging from that rotten tree. Let's be crystal clear on that. But moving forward, I just want to let you guys know that I was just watching the news before I hopped on, and it broke my heart. And it wasn't due to police violence, but I heard that a truck today and another man murdered. Like that is horrible. Like our city is basically gone to cahoots. Like it's just done. Like this is the wild, wild west. Nobody's safe. So that's why, with election time being on the rouse right now, we have 13 days. I'm asking everybody, lottie dottie, and everybody, exercise your vote to right. We need things done, and it don't just stop at election time, but that's a big step moving in the right direction. So I'm asking everybody, make sure you cast your votes and be heard. So with that being said,
Speaking of that,
my brother Ken on. I'm sorry, did you say something?
Yeah, speaking of that, I don't know if y'all heard that in the background, but there's gunshots outside my house. So I'm gonna be monitoring the situation here. But Wild Wild West is right.
Wow, that's horrible. I did hear that sound. That said, you can't even be on like a live broadcast from your own home. And thank God that bullets don't have a name. That bullet could have, God forbid, flew in and hit our brother. Like this is really sad. Like we're in a time that nobody's safe. That's why we always give you support of all the victims of police brutality. But unfortunately, we have our brother Brian that reads the list of actual homicides right here in our city. Enough is enough, because we're in a time now you're not even safe from the cops and robbers, and it seems like the cops are the robbers. Like nobody's safe, and then they're not solving none of these violent offenders. They're not solving it under these. I'm sorry, none of these violent cases of murder. Like they heard and just kill us, and it's just business as usual, and somebody have to bury their loved one. It's not business as usual, because you got to keep in mind you're not safe. I don't care, what. And it's sad that other neighborhoods are safer. Let's be clear. Like you don't hear too many gunshots rolling through Roller Park. Why is it? One must ask themselves, why is some neighborhoods safe and other neighborhoods are just left to go to shambles? We need to do something about that. They said, for no further ado, I'm going to bring my brother Ken on. Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check. I just wanted to, if there's gunshots, of course, just on the recording, if there's gunshots and stuff happening outside of someone's home, they're activating 911. It could be someone that's injured outside. There could be someone that is in need of medical attention, and doing immediately. Hopefully everything is well. The other thing is that, of course, being a member of the Black community, being a former member of law enforcement, it's some questions that was asked of me maybe about a week ago when I was on the line was how exactly can families possibly reopen cases involving wrongful deaths of loved ones? The criminal side, not the civil side. Civil cases have their own track as well as criminal cases, and that's an important question. In terms of answering it, I think it's important for us to look at the Breonna case, the Breonna Taylor case that's happening in Kentucky. The Attorney General said that he had no problems with the case that he put in through the grand jury in Kentucky, and that when the verdict came back that the officers weren't responsible for the murder of Breonna Taylor, there were questions from the community that started surfacing because certain jurors started coming forward and saying that the Attorney General Daniel Cameron didn't put the case in properly, that they didn't hear or they weren't given the option to actually charge those officers with a capital crime, a murder. And at some point in time, I believe one of the jurors had filed a lawsuit, and the judge opened up the case for everyone to kind of see what was going on behind the scenes. And now we understand that the evidence that was put in was only for wanton endangerment by the Attorney General when he actually created that case to put it in through a grand jury. It was only for wanton endangerment, and that wanton endangerment had everything to do with shots that were fired into other apartments and had nothing to do with shots that were fired into Miss Breonna Taylor's home. And that's a very important element that kind of answers Tawanda's question a week ago about families that have cases and how the cases become reopened. In the case of Kentucky, if there's evidence that has not been presented to a grand jury, and that grand jury has only deliberated on wanton endangerment type of evidence, then the fresh evidence would be the murder of Breonna Taylor and the evidence that could possibly lead a grand jury to charge someone with that murder, whether it's intentional or through negligence. That should be evidence that's presented to a grand jury. So even though a grand jury has been assembled in the state of Kentucky on the Breonna Taylor case, the way a state can reopen that case is by having a new grand jury assembled and having fresh evidence with a new charge presented to the elements of that charge. That could happen in any jurisdiction in terms of cases that are old cases that have had no indictment against people who are responsible. It depends on the charges that they were actually, what evidence was brought before the grand jury and what charges were pending against those individuals. Does that answer your question, Tawanda? I wanted to make sure that I started off with that.
Yes, and I thank you for digging into that and diving in. That definitely answers the question. So I definitely appreciate you, my brother. Definitely.
So I mean, in the case of many of the families, the victims and their families in different jurisdictions, the next part of the question becomes the secret and impaneled grand jury proceeding. If it's a secret impaneled grand jury proceeding and you don't know what documents, what evidence, what charges, you may know what charges were filed, but you don't know, what, not so much charges were filed. You don't know what evidence was presented to a grand jury. Then it's hard for you to determine what is fresh and what is stale evidence with respect to that grand jury. So part of the discussion that has to happen more broadly is to open up the grand jury proceeding after the fact so that victims heard behind the scenes, because that grand jury is secret, what happened behind the scenes for them to evaluate the evidence and render a determination to move forward with a crime. And that's an important thing that has to happen in every jurisdiction, I believe, for us to have a pathway towards accountability as well as a pathway towards trying to make sure that we have people that are more informed about the process in itself.
That definitely thank you for sharing that, my brother. And also, I wanted to mention that the last time you were on, our brother Mickey actually videoed you, so that video will be coming up soon. So that way you can share, and I'm definitely going to share you because sharing you is sharing a bunch of positive, energy and positive information like that we need to know. Like, and I just appreciate you, and everything that you're doing and have done. I appreciate when you were on the panel, when we were talking about the Leobor, and you shared your honest, and that's the part that I love about you. You shared your honest point of views. You don't sugarcoat it, you don't water it down, and I love that. I really love that fire. I love that fire.
No, I appreciate that. It's important feedback.
And is there anything else you want to add? Because I know that you have somewhere to go, and just make sure, like when you leave, that you actually still, continue to watch if you can, because we have a lot of, stuff coming on. Like a lot of special guests is going to definitely bring a lot of stuff that I definitely want you to, give us feedback on it every time you're doing this again. Like you just doing this from your heart, and I know you got a busy schedule, and you're doing so much, and I just can't thank you enough. So, and that's why I'm real thankful that our brother Mickey actually takes the time. That first of all, I want to thank Ben, because Ben is before the movement and behind the movement, right? And he makes the whole entire video, takes his time, puts that together. But the part I like too, I love about Mickey, is he takes each special guest. So tonight, guys, as you guys are talking, Mickey will be making shorter videos. So if you want to share this video to your page, for people to see, I think that's great. So that's awesome. Like, you're getting it all for free. All you got to do is just share. That's it.
I mean, I would say this. I think for Baltimore, there was a recent Department of Justice report. It's not recent. It's been out for a while, for a couple of years now. But I would hope that at some point in time people look that up. It's under the Obama administration, towards the tail end, was investigating Baltimore Police Department, and it came out in a very lengthy report. But it came out with findings that showed that there was a pattern in practice of the Baltimore Police Department targeting people based on their color, and committing under the First Amendment, like let's say for instance under the First Amendment, that's someone's speech. If a person questioned why they were being stopped, questioned, and frisked by police, that led to some force being exercised against those folks, that shouldn't have been applied according to the Department of Justice report. In some instances where force was applied and may have been justified, maybe the person committed a crime and was resisting arrest, the Department of Justice report also said at some point in time, once a person, I'm under arrest, I give up, that there was excessive force where under the float they may have a reasonable suspicion of a crime, is what kind of starts the process of stop and question and frisk. Those are key words that people are familiar with. But when it comes to Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which is a seizure, when you actually stop that person and they're no longer free to leave, if that person submits to the authority of the police and they're not resisting arrest, and then the officer commits excessive force, meaning they continue to apply force to that person, such as Freddie Gray. Freddie Gray submitted to what I saw on video, submitted to the force, the control of police officers, but we saw Mr. Freddie Gray, being treated very badly to the point where he, had injuries and the arrest occurred. And that should have been something that, it unfortunately didn't amount to accountability at the local level in the police department, but it should have, I believe, based on what I saw. There's no reason why a person who's being arrested should end up at a hospital with a spinal injury simply because, they are black and they submitted to the police. Those type of things are outrageous. And as a black man, I can't sit by and be silent about that type of stuff. I can't. And I would hope that other members of law enforcement, whether they're active or retired, could have these kind of conversations to make sure that the community understands that it's important for us to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable as police officers, but and also as citizens, taxpayer citizens who actually pay for the policing, pay for the jobs, pay for the equipment that's out there, pay for the training. Citizens, as tax-paying citizens, we expect way more out of police officers, and police officers need to understand that they are held accountable to the people. They don't operate on Mars and people are on planet Earth. They're held accountable to the taxpayers, and that's another conversation for another time, and we can have that. But it's important for us to have it, I believe.
But Shannon, just real fast, because I know you gotta go, but I'm glad you made that point. And then I think about all the brutalization that took place when my brother Tyrone West was brutally murdered. Like, for one, they had no reason to pull him over so-called alleged traffic stop, saying that he was driving too slow towards the stop sign. Foolishness. They made up a lie about him having alleged drugs on him. When my attorneys went 2 years later to go get it, you know, none were never tested, none were never submitted, so all that was a bunch of baloney. But the whole point of what I'm trying to say, or make my point, is the fact that once they had my brother handcuffed, right, for them to beat my brother over 18 minutes with sticks, baton, open fists, like to torture him, tase him, pepper spray him, mason, that was an overkill. Literally, they killed him. He didn't die in Good Stand. He died on Kentmore and Kelsway. That was overkill. But the question I want to ask you before you go is, I saw something, and I want to give, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to our council people that are working hard to, like, they're stepping up. This council board that we have now, most of them, for the most part, are doing an excellent job, you know, and calling out the city's corruption and things like that. And the topic was about the face recognition, right? And they're saying that they, you know, want something done about that because it's not right. We know that the FBI uses this face recognition, like, you know, to solve crimes or murder, things like that. They pick up your face. But the problem is, the folks are making is that they're saying, and they get it wrong. They even said that they thought Oprah Winfrey was a man. So I wanted to ask you real quick, what do you think about the face recognition? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? What do you think about that? Bad thing? What do you think about that?
I mean, facial recognition can have its place in society. I mean, it's basically a camera that's video recording people in public spaces. It shouldn't be used to record people in private spaces. If you're inside your home, for instance, someone shouldn't be able to have a camera on the outside of the home filming inside your home trying to record you, because that's private, you know, that's not out in a public space. So, I mean, in terms of when we talk about citizens being able to film citizens, you know, there's already a legal precedent that says that when we're in public, there's no right of privacy with respect to police officers being filmed during the course of their duty. It works in reverse as well. If you're a citizen on a street corner, or if you're a citizen in a public building, we have, you know, surveilling people intentionally walking into spaces that are in public. So therefore, someone taking that film and now synthesizing it through a machine or a system that spits out data regarding who that person may be, that's another conversation, because you know, if I film you on a street corner, for instance, but I'm the government, the question becomes, how long should I be able to hold that I've collected against you? If you're not involved in a criminal activity and you're just walking down the street, what if the system is poorly created where it gives false positives? Tawanda and I are walking down the street in Baltimore City, and then all of a sudden there's a camera that the government puts up, scans our faces as we're walking and having a good conversation, and then all of a sudden it comes back that says, hey, you know what, Ken and Tawanda are wanted because they're not Ken and Tawanda, but they're Bill and Jane. But we're not Bill and Jane. So what are the metrics involved with the system that gives a false positive is a very important issue, because now we're getting back to black people who are stopped, questioned, and frisked more so than white people, and how we're subjected to a system that is inherently racist and discriminatory based on outcomes of people being stopped, questioned, frisked based on their color of skin, based on neighborhoods, if white people were subjected to the same stop, question, and frisk, then we would have an equal system, but they're not. And out there that everyone in government is aware of, white people are not subjected to the same treatment. There are two different systems that are being operated, and that has been going on since 1619. White people in 1619 who committed a crime in America went to a jail for the crime they committed. Black people in 1619, based on the color of their skin, were criminalized simply because of the color of their skin. So we have had and have always had in America two different legal systems, and that's an important conversation for us to have, which means that fast forward to today, if people who are designing these systems are biased, have discriminatory intent, are inherently racist, then they can create a system that produces inherently racist outcomes. And that should be something that concerns everybody, especially black people.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, and that's why the city councilman board has a problem with it, because it can actually get, like you said, me and you could be walking down the street and we get jammed up or something because it recognized the wrong face. Like I even had with my phone, I never set it up, but it shows me pictures of somebody else that looks closer to my description, same type of complexion, maybe same hairdo, and it asks me, "Hey, Tawanda, is this you?" And I'm like, "No." It's like, check off if this you, because it saves like my pictures to like my gallery. But like at least once a week, it sends me 3 pictures of other females that are not me, and it's asking me, "Hey, Tawanda, is this you?" And I'm in my mind, "Hey, who the hell are you asking me a question about? Who am I? The phone does too much now, so we ain't got to worry about the chip being better than our body. The chip is these damn phones." But again, I'm not gonna hold you, my brother. Thank you.
Well, hold on one second. Let me just make sure that I expand on that conversation, that idea that you just brought up, because under policing, if all I have to have is reasonable suspicion of you committing a crime, and I have a database that's spitting out people who are suspicious, I don't have probable cause that they committed a crime. I have where it's giving me reasonableness to stop them. That means I can go out willy-nilly and say that it's not me that's causing me to stop black people inherently based on, what I thought was reasonable suspicion. It's the computer program that's doing it. So now we have a whole new classification of stop, question, frisk that doesn't involve a person that is saying that they are biased based on the stops. It would be the computer system that gets blamed for the biases and the outcomes, which means that this system, unfortunately, becomes a defense mechanism to lower liability against the rogue actions of police officers and government. It's something that, from a big, from a we're talking about this from a micro, and we're talking it from a macro view. From a macro view, that should shock the shit out of everybody, because that is a reality that could happen.
And I thank you again for bringing that fire and bringing that great point across. Like, definitely, thank you so much. And again, I know if you gotta go, so we're gonna a quick question or comment, because our brother gotta go, and I gotta bring my next guest on.
Just one thing. My understanding is that these facial recognition programs generally tend to make a significantly higher number of errors with people of color. I don't know if it's deliberate or it's a design weakness, whatever it is. But the false positive you're speaking about, I think in most of the facial recognition software packages so far, that problem is greater when dealing with people of color.
And unfortunately, if you have that type of error rate, then that would mean that the program is defective. So you shouldn't have the government using defective programs that they understand are defective, and that the consequences are these intentional stops with unintended consequences, is what it would be referred to as far as how I would categorize it. So if you have a program that is creating stop, question, frisk, and although it may have been unintentional for it to create these false positives, then that means that you shouldn't be using that program.
And again, I thank you, but we know that this city is so corrupt, they like to use failed stuff. Just like with the spy planes that were spying on us, we had no idea, we didn't like it. As soon as we found out about it. My brother Seifu, all of us, we ran down to City Hall. We was like, oh, hell no. And they still brought it back. And now that it's time for them to pick up that $8 million tab, now they're like, oh, well, it's not effective. But we got all these damn homicides. Just like even with the speed cameras that was failed. They said, like, the courts ruled that it was failed. They took it off. You know what I mean? But yet they brought it back and they're putting more speed cameras out on every corner in certain neighborhoods. So, I mean, it is what it is. But again, my brother, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Mic
Mic
check.
check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Yes.
So, brother, Ben, I have a real quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Did our sister, Dr. Cheryl Crockett, join us yet?
No.
Okay, cool. All right, so my next guest, I'm going to bring on our sister. Her name is Erica, and she's been in the community for more than 30 years, working with children, as well as elderly folks, as well as people with special needs. But things got real in November, I believe it was 2017, when her son, her unarmed son, 16-year-old, had a gun. Paul, just imagine your baby come and tell you some horror. And I know he's probably still affected because as a grown woman, I never had the experience of having a gun, but I done had it. I'm still affected. Like when I got pulled over for a traffic stop, they came up and they had the gun to the side of my head. That's still affected. So every time an officer stopped me and I'm like, what do you got a gun pulled up? But I didn't have it in my face. I asked them, could you put the gun away? Like I'm freaking out. Put the gun away, and the officer put it back in the holster. But for you to have it out, but I couldn't imagine the horrors that a child goes through. A 16-year-old baby went through experience having a gun. Her son having a gun pulled down her. So now to add, they call her mama activist. To add that on her credentials. So I'm gonna bring our sister mama activist out here. Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check. Yo, good evening. Can everybody hear me? Mic
Yes.
check.
Yep.
So as Tawanda kindly stated, I was kind of thrust when my 16-year-old son was approached by an off-duty, plainclothes Baltimore City police officer in our neighborhood of Howard County. So I'm going to unpack a couple of things here and try and be before you strong and not necessarily long, okay? So this first disclaimer is I am not a cop hater, which is what I've been coined since I've decided to speak out and defend my son and demand accountability against this particular officer that decided to target my child. I have a strong dislike of anyone who chooses to not do their job in an honorable way. So, Howard County, November 8th, 3:45 in the afternoon, my son is standing on the corner waiting to be picked up by a van, doing what I instructed him to do. And my mother's intuition said, call and check on him. He didn't answer. A few seconds later, my mother runs in the room and says that my son is on the phone screaming that somebody is holding a gun on him. Where he is picked up on his van service is not too far from our home in Howard County, and the cul-de-sacs are split by like a gap. So my mother and I just take off running to him, and when we get close to him, I can see a man off in the distance, and I'm thinking like, is he trying to rob my son? So I just approached the man and asked him like, what's going on? My son's nervous, scared to death because he's like, Ma, he has a gun. At that moment, I can't see any of that. I just see protect my son mode. That's it. When I approach him, he's talking on the phone or something. And I'm asking him, like, what are you doing? Why did you approach my son? He has on a black hoodie, blue jeans, and tennis shoes. And he's talking. Later, I find out he's talking on a Bluetooth. I can't get any understanding out of him, so I call 911. And I tell them that there's a man out here, and he pulled a gun on my son. Then he hollers out Baltimore City. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm from Baltimore City, but that's not how I usually greet people. So I'm totally confused. So I'm like, okay, and what does that mean? And then he pulls out something from his pocket and he starts shining it in a distance. So by the time Howard County Police get to the scene, they're asking who has the gun, because that's what I said, that there was a man out here and he had a gun and he pulled it on my son. He has his hands in his pocket and they're like, take your hands out your pocket. So there's a video on YouTube, you can look it up, a small clip where Howard County Police was called to the scene. I called them. They disarmed him. He still has the gun in his pocket. And then that's where this all just goes downhill. I did everything that was available to me and my son as citizens. I filed a complaint. His sergeant was called on scene because they later found out that he was a police officer. Only after they got to the scene, he never divulged this information until Howard County Police were on the scene and out of their car. That's when we found out he was a Baltimore City police officer, which still didn't mean anything because he was out of his jurisdiction and my son wasn't committing a crime. He wasn't a suspect. It was 3:45 in the afternoon. He was standing him. He asked him, "What are you doing around here? Because you look like you don't live here." What does that look like? Because he's over 6 feet tall, a big black male standing in Howard County. Had he been a 16-year-old teenager with his book bag on because he was coming home from school, the officer would not have thought that my child was out of place. And it still is a little sketchy because people think because the officer was black that means that it wasn't that bad or he wasn't racially profiling my son, which is exactly what he was doing. His verbiage spoke to that. He admittedly said that he pulled his gun because he said he felt threatened. After he approached my son, asked him several questions, never identified himself as a police officer. When my son asked him to leave and they exchanged words kind of aggressively, that is when this man pulled his gun on my son. I filed a complaint with Internal Affairs. I filed a complaint with the Civilian Review Board. When I went to the police station to file the complaint, because Internal Affairs closes at 4 o'clock, and this happened at about 5 after everything was over on a Friday afternoon, I walked into the police station, and what they did was they laughed and said, "Oh yeah, we heard about this. At least your son didn't die. You can file a report on Monday." My son and I got in the car and my son cried. He was like, I can't believe this is happening. And because I had no explanation for him and no way to put a bandage on this boo-boo, I just went into full active mode. I filed a peace order against this officer. We had 2 court hearings, and in the court hearings, of course, he had a lawyer, and I had to be my son's lawyer. So the peace order was granted fully. Shaz Ball, the attorney for one case, happened to be his attorney, and he was shocked that he lost. So there was a Baltimore City police officer with a peace order issued on him because he pulled a gun on a 16-year-old kid. He filed an appeal because one of the other tactics they used was they allowed the statute of limitation to run out for the officer to be charged. So he filed an appeal because he didn't want his 10 days suspension, just 10 days for pulling a gun on a 16-year-old kid. He didn't want his 10 days suspension, so he filed an appeal. During this appeal, there were 12 officers that filed an appeal for the exact same thing, for Baltimore City Police Department allowing the statute of limitation to run out on these officers being charged. Egregious charges, yeah, but still didn't matter. Yeah, I mean, because technically the law says that they have to be made aware of their charges within a year, and if they're not, then it's nothing they can do about it. They can't be held accountable. This has happened 75 times in 2017 and 18. So here we are today, and finally the final appeal, because I went to the last hearing and asked could an appeal be filed, and it wasn't overturned. The judge, which I understood, said that it had to be upheld because they waited beyond the 12 months to notify the officer of his disciplinary action. So he probably will be back out on the streets of Baltimore policing. This isn't his first infraction. He also broke the jaw of a suspect, took him to the hospital. Took him to jail and didn't get him any medical treatment. Once the man was released, he went to the hospital, and that's where he was told that his jaw was broken. He won a $75,000 lawsuit against the city. And again, the officer was back out on the street, encounters my son, pulls a gun on my son, files an appeal so that he doesn't get his 10-day suspension, and will probably be back out on the street, and God knows what will happen next. So the accountability factor with Baltimore City Police Department is definitely broken. The transparency factor is definitely broken because the report that they wrote was a lie. They said that the officer did not. One of his charges was that he had a peace order issued on him while he was an officer of the law, but then in the report it said that there was not a peace order issue. You can look this officer up, Officer Damon Durant. You can look him up on case search. I look him up often. There's some horrible things about him in his personal life that should make him not be an officer, but his professionalism, his professional history is awful as well. So that's my story, kind of walk down the path of leaving out some of the things that I've had to go through, but just giving you a brief overview. But the fact that this happens a lot, I got a lot of inboxes and messages from a lot of young black males saying that this has happened in their lives a lot of times, and they weren't believed, or people just think that it's something that happens and the police are allowed to do these things to you. And that breaks my heart that we normalize these things that we know are wrong. Had you or I pulled a gun on a 16-year-old child, I would be arrested right now, and so would you. So the fact that officers of the law get preferential treatment when they do things like this, and then we pay them to police and supposedly protect and serve. How can we trust them when they do things like this, and then we watch the system go full on to protect them? So that's basically my story, and I am still in the fight. I'm not going to give up. I'm pretty sure that this officer sees my son and myself when he's at home, and I'm glad that he does, because I want him to know that he picked the wrong kid.
Definitely proud of you, my sister. I'm definitely proud of you. I wish, did you know about the action that we did in PG County this past weekend?
Yeah, someone from the ACLU actually contacted me, but I got back issues, so I couldn't be there. So I do testify, like for the legislative hearings. I make sure that I testify or I write written statements. People from the ACLU contact me often because they know that I am so adamant about police accountability. So I stay in the fight in any way I can, even if I can't physically. But yeah, my thing is, at this point, people tell me you should be careful, and they're right, because these people are evil and malicious, and they do target. When I talk, they call my phone and ask me like, "Hey, we heard that you needed some information." No, you had somebody listening and you saw that I was talking again, so now you want to reach out to me. It's just the harassment that I've gotten from the police department throughout this process, the lack of support, the things that my son and I were told when we went to give our statement at Internal Affairs. Like, they told us we had to turn our phones off, and I was like, "Wow, your phone's on." I was like, let's be clear. I or my son are not criminals. You ran our record. I have never been arrested in my 44 years of life, and neither has my 19-year-old son. So at this point, you're just picking and grabbing at straws. And why do we need to turn our phones off? Say turn them on vibrate or silent, but why do we need to turn them off? Or they asked me to refrain from speaking to the media because they knew that I had done several news interviews about this. So just the things that they do and the terminology that they use, people are fearful. So it just makes people not want to come forth to hold officers accountable. And then if this is the end result where they actually get off, then they're like, what's the use of going through all of this? Why should I subject myself to this? So I believe that my son was chosen for a reason. Do I wish it wasn't him? Because these things still linger and affect him 3 years later, and me as well. But I also am called for a greater purpose, and God knew that I needed to be chosen because I wasn't going to shut up.
And that's right, sis. And I applaud you for not shutting up, because your son could have easily been murdered. You get what I'm saying? Easily been murdered. You got a repeat violent offender that's out, and then it doesn't even matter their color, because when I think about my brother was beat to death by different races, but you know what? Of the police department, it was like black men, white, like different races. It was just crazy. But at the end of the day, they all become blue. It doesn't even move. They all become blue. They all part of this big, cold, solid wall, this big gang, and they become blue. It doesn't matter their color. They, you know what it's just saying. But I just thank you, and I know the harassment is real single day, so I know how real it is, and I just pray that you continue on just being strong. And I have a question for you. Is there any way that we can reach out for you? Like, how can we reach out and support you?
I mean, I've been in this fight for so long. Like, some years ago, it would have been like to show up at his court cases. When he did file the appeal, no one was there. It was so blatant that no one was there. Everybody was looking at me like, who is she? How'd she get in here? At first, they thought I was a reporter, because they couldn't believe that I had actually followed the process all the way through to that point. So, you know, but at this time, like, I don't even know what the next step is, because I watched to see whether he has any active cases on case search, as has he gone back into active police work, and I haven't seen anything as of yet. But at this point, this is support, like knowing that you know, we are a family. That's what one: police brutality and police murder. So just supporting each other and being surrounded by people that actually understand, because there are people that normalize the things that police officers do that are wrong, and it's hard to talk to those people that don't understand and have never been through something like this. So support is real.
I had a question for you. I really commend you for putting together all of the research that you've done on this officer. Have you logged any of this on the BPD Watch site?
No.
So there is a website, bpdwatch.com, and it's an independent database of police officers put together by Open Justice Baltimore, and all of the information that you have collected of the things that this officer has done, any photos, videos, or anything that you have taken, you can add them to this database. This database is what helps people keep officers responsible, because there's no single place where all this information is collected, and they have started collecting it there. So I would definitely check it out.
And that's crazy that you said that, because I Google his name every now and again, and when you Google his name, the internet comes up where he pulled a gun on my 16-year-old son. So that's, you see me smiling, so yep. That's rewarding. That even if your department tried to cover it up, when you Google his name, it comes up.
Yep.
And since I have a question for you, how is your son doing now? Like, coping with all this? How is he actively doing?
Son has periods where he's just really quiet. He doesn't. I made up this term, and it's called police encounter induced PTSD. So when you have an incident like this with police and you survive, you really don't know how to have a healthy encounter with police again. And police can take that and use that and say, well, he was nervous because he was hiding something, or he did something, or he's guilty of something. No, I'm nervous because your homeboy pulled a gun on me when I was 16 years old. And now that I'm 19, I still don't know how to have a healthy encounter with police. So when he has encounters with police, he's always nervous. He comes home, or we have a thing where we have to call each other. If we're pulled over or traffic stop or just have an encounter with police, we call each other and put the phone on speaker. Um, it's just like my family. We have these new things that we have to do to keep each other safe and protected, not just physically but mentally as well. So my son just has his periods where he's scared, and it's hard to be scared being a black man. It's hard to be scared being a man. So what do you do? How do you deal with that? And that's the thing, guys, or address what they leave, the trauma that they leave people with when you do these things to them. And not just the people that you don't kill, but their family as well.
Mm-hmm. That's deep. And again, I'm sorry, my sister. Do anybody else have any questions or comments for our sister?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question that Tawana just did about how your son's doing now. So thank you for that answer. That's the first time I heard that explanation. Police encounter-induced PTSD. I think you're right on the mark with that. And I want to apologize in the pre-show discussion. I didn't realize who you were. As soon as you began to tell the story, I right away knew. So sorry about that.
I get that all the time. I actually talked to the deputy commissioner, and I asked him. I said, because one of the things in the consent decree is they're supposed to implement new police training, whatever. So I asked him. I said, "Well, have you ever thought about police brutality during police training? Because police need to know that when you do things like this and you go too far and you hurt people, you don't only hurt them physically, you hurt them mentally, you scar them mentally, and they need to understand that. And maybe if they hear it directly from victims, it will resonate with them better." And of course, he just was like, "Oh, you never thought about that before." Well, think about it.
Yeah. In terms of what in terms of that police encounter thing, stress that you're talking about, psychologists have actually started talking about what's called CRSD, which is continuous recurring stress disorder, and talking about that especially in oppressed communities. Every day, live with stress of what's going to happen to me, and how do I deal with that? So that's just something that you might want to look into, is that idea of continuous recurring stress, because that's been found to be medically a terrible, terrible thing to have happen to people. So just a kind of something for you to look at.
Right. And then Tawanda, you know what?
What?
The video that played before we all started speaking. When these officers are let back out on the street and we live in the communities that they police, we can encounter these officers anytime. How do you think that makes sense to you? I live in Baltimore City. I work in Baltimore City. I work in the community of Baltimore City. So if Tawanda is pulled over by this officer that did what he did to her brother, how is she supposed to react?
But they don't care, sis, because when we were outside doing West Wednesday, out of the jurisdiction in which Officer Killer Chapman, he was one of the first two. Ruiz, the one we highlighted in that video, the repeat violent offender, as well as Chapman is the repeat violent offender. But we're way out of the jurisdiction. We're actually, when we were on Greenmount and 33rd, we were in Northern District. So that's the sector for Northern District. So I know about all the sectors. I know all the rules to the game. But for this Northeast Police District, killer to actually come stalk us at West Wednesday, roll by me, mugging, it's horrible. And recently, the one Ruiz that we're highlighting, he came and encountered my cousin. Now she is flipping out like her son got into a new minor accident, and he was actually there laughing. She recognized him. She said, "Oh my God, you killed my cousin Tyrone." He bust out laughing in her face. Come on. Laughing, so they actually don't care, my friend. They don't care. And our sister Charlene, she said, "Wow, pulling out a gun on a 16-year-old over an argument, that's unacceptable." And
don't add to it. It wasn't an argument. My son was just standing on the bus stop. He was standing waiting for to be picked up by a van, to go to his after school program. So they weren't involved in an argument.
Okay,
Of
I'm
course,
glad.
he got upset when my son started questioning him and asking him why was he bothering him. But it was at that point it was just two people having a conversation. He never identified himself as an officer, so my son had no reason to feel like he needed to give him any respect. He actually was a stranger, an adult talking to a child. I don't teach my children to talk to strangers.
I'm glad you cleared that up so my sister
All right,
can
then.
definitely heard me. Well, anybody else have any questions from me? All righty, well, my chat, hold on in queue, you can. If you have to leave and take care of business, we definitely understand and we love you and we thank you again. And give your son a virtual hug for me. Tell him I said I'm so sorry that he had to endure that. And it was like you didn't show when Ken had basically one of the guys I had on had made a good point when they said that response that you get your first encounter with law enforcement officers, it basically encouraged you. And that one, I think, a matter of fact, I don't think it was Ken, it was we had Fred Jackson. Fred basically made that point and said, so if the officer, is respectful, then, your child would have be looking at officers and being, okay, they're respectful, they, whatever. But when they had that horrible encounter, that's just terrible. So give them a virtual hug from everybody. Just tell them that we love and support them in any way, and in every way, in any way that we can help you guys, just always reach out to me, please. So, I'm ready to do a mic check, and I wanted to check in real quick to see if you had our sister, Dr. Cheryl Crockett, in queue yet, because I know she had sent me a message and said she was about to join us. Is she in queue?
Yes, she's here.
Yes,
I'm here.
Oh, yay, I'm excited.
I'm here.
All right.
And I'm okay. I'm okay with being called Miss Cheryl Crockett. Thank you for the upgrade in title.
All right, Miss Cheryl Crockett. All right, so just to give you, so our next guest is Cheryl Crockett. Basically, she wears a lot of crowns as well. For being a singer, doing poetry, just all type of things. But unfortunately, since the untimely, brutal murder, the lynching that the world watched on national TV, on your internet, through your phone, wherever it was, through wherever you were watching, we all saw the brutal lynching of George Floyd. We all saw when George Floyd cried out for his mom, and like one of my sisters, Dion, eloquently said that when he said mama, he called for all the frontline mamas on the field. And the fact that his mama was dead for a few years, that speaks in volumes. So this sister went straight into action. She went straight into action, and she became a very great activist. And she does something called, is it set in from set out? What is it called again, my queen?
Sit out to sit in.
Sit out to sit in protest. So I'm gonna bring her up. No further. Your queen sister, Miss Cheryl Crockett. Mic check.
Mic check.
Hello.
Mic check. Check.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful to be here and be able to speak with you today. I am the daughter of a police detective who high ranking. He's passed on, but he was a police detective. So I was raised in a household and with family members, many family members who were police, and my heritage is my DNA is predominantly African American, and so my experience with police growing up was different from most, but I didn't know it at the time. My brother became a police officer before he became a firefighter. My whole family believes in serving the community. My mother was a teacher, and right now I'm a contact tracer, COVID-19 contact tracer for the city of Baltimore. Because of all the creative things that I do, they don't quite pay the bills as one might guess. And I was driving Uber and Lyft after I moved to Baltimore 3 years ago, and
the pandemic took my job away. My doctor said stop driving passengers. So I was sitting at home watching too much news, and May came around, and we saw George Floyd get murdered. And it was horrific, and I saw the reaction of everybody around me, and I was definitely affected. And I said, oh no, people are going to go out and protest, and they're going to put their health and their lives at risk, or the lives of those that they're leaving at home. And I was so grateful to see that there weren't as many spikes in coronavirus when people went out to protest. That was a blessing, because we still don't understand the coronavirus at this time. And I was wondering, how can we protest and stay safe? How can we protect our families? Because if one person in a household goes out, they can bring it back and affect everyone. We already know this. And I thought about it for a while. I prayed about it for a while. And I said, okay, virtual protest. That's probably the safest way. And I said, how does that work? They had sit-ins in the 60s, the 50s and 60s. And I'm probably speaking to a group of people who already know that the first sit-in was in Baltimore. And it was a group of Morgan students. Well, we can't sit in during a pandemic because we put ourselves at risk. So I said, let's call it a sit out. And this sit out to sit in is the name that we came up with. It's a unique enough hashtag that you can search it and find it. And basically, we do a virtual protest. We take a selfie. We hold up any literature that we believe in, a book by an author, maybe a book of speeches by Martin Luther King. If we want to sing a song on video, We Shall Overcome, or Lift Every Voice and Sing, whatever it is, and do it with your family. And make your statement about racism and police brutality. Of the stories that exist in families intergenerationally could be lost at any moment, because that older person who was alive, and well, a teen or an adult, when Martin Luther King did the March on Washington, they're probably not going to be with us as long as somebody who's 20 or 30 years younger. And nobody was thinking about these stories of racism, and passing that legacy of standing up for what we believe in to the next generations. And so there's Martin Luther King during the March on Washington. But I was a baby, and my mom and my brother and I were ordered to stay home because they were afraid that there was going to be mass violence on the mall that day. But my dad was a police officer, and he was assigned to Martin Luther King. He was a plainclothes detective. I was sheltered from all of the civil rights stuff that was going on around me because I was so young. But I'm all grown up now, been that way for quite some time. And nobody was really looking at passing that legacy on, that legacy of social justice, that legacy of standing up for what you believe in, until George Floyd. Something about that moment changed everything. So I had my own experience with racism. I was very sheltered, and I knew racism was around. But when I called 911 earlier this year, this is just as the pandemic was unfolding, a police officer asked me my race. And I said, what does that have to do with anything? And that's not my exact question. I said, I was just stunned. I was like, what? And he tried to define race for me as if I didn't know what it meant. And I filed a complaint, and the officer, because it was on the phone, and they were keeping police officers away from going to places where they could possibly contract the virus if it wasn't an emergent situation. And when I called, it was about vandalism that had happened in the past. I didn't know when it happened. I just knew that it had happened in the last 24 hours. And I was calling to make a report. And the officer called me back after I had spoken with a woman at the 911 number. The officer called me back, and I could only guess that he sounded as though he might be white. And he asked me my race. And when I told him what was on my driver's license, he said, "Is that what is on your driver's license?" So he doubled down to press me for my race. And I filed a complaint on the website, the Baltimore Police Department website, and I got a call back from a man, an officer, who gave me his name, and it sounded as though he might be a Hispanic person. And he told me, "Ma'am, this is the policy of the Baltimore Police Department to ask the race of callers to 911. And my response to him was, "Thank you very much for telling me this. I disagree with your policy, and I was hoping that you had a different answer for me." And I saved the complaint in my old computer, which subsequently crashed. And I know I shared this with Brandon Scott on a radio program a couple of weeks ago. Well, no, a month ago now. And he gave me his phone number. He told me to call him. And I did so before the radio program was over. And I have not heard back from him yet. There's no voicemail. I probably will need to follow up. My concern is, if this is the policy of the Baltimore Police Department, then why is it not being enforced? Because I've lived here for almost 3 years, and when there's an accident, or when I smell smoke, a suspicious situation where I think somebody's in danger, I will call 911. And no one has asked me my race. When it's a woman answering the phone, when it's someone who sounds as though they might be black or a minority, no one asked me my race. So this policy, this so-called policy, is not being enforced, and it has an intimidating, an element that is intimidating about it. So that is the nature of my personal protest with Sit Out to Sit In, because I am going for getting that policy changed, and it is not acceptable to me that it remain in place. That was just shared, and I would like to be put in touch with that person. I see that she's off the call, but I invite people to view the very, very creative photos and videos that have been posted so far. We started on Juneteenth, and we kept it going until July 4th weekend. And then I said, well, so many more people have been murdered by police, or their murders have come to light just since Juneteenth. We need to keep this going because people are expecting us to die down or back off or find something else to focus on, because it's no longer Juneteenth, it's no longer, summertime, and Black History Month is this much far away. And I said, no, every month we'll do something. And So the 19th of every month, it's that month 10th. So July 10th, August 10th. We just had October 10th, and that's when I posted on our Facebook page the link to the radio program where I met Tawanda, and we had a talk with Pastor Stephen Turner on Elevation Radio 1 about sit out to sit in. Back when I started this, we only had about 100,000 people who had died of COVID-19. And I was asking people, of that number, how many people do you think were eligible or registered voters? And how many more are we about to lose in November 3rd? And here we are, well over 200,000 dead from COVID-19. So I say, in the presence of a pandemic, a novel coronavirus that we do not understand, for one of many reasons, including being able to vote, because it's really hard to vote if you're on a ventilator. Let's protect our health and the health of those around us. And when we post, if you post a selfie with sit out to sit in, the hashtag, and post it, I'll reshare it. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if I know where you are, I tag the public official associated with your area. If I don't already know it, I'll ask. And that stands as a public statement, because there are people like me who had never made a public statement against racism and against police brutality. And there are those who simply want to tell the world that they stand against it, because you've seen the signs. Silence equals violence. And the light has not come on for everybody willing to take a stand. Anything you put on the internet, it stays there forever. It's not going anywhere. When you go out and protest, and I take nothing away from those who have gone to City Hall, those who have gone down to Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, D.C. near Lafayette Square. I went there too, with my mask and thing. I take nothing away from those who are protesting in person. I consider it a sacrifice. I consider it a great risk. And this is an alternative that I offer. There is no condemnation here. So I also see the value of communicating social justice as a family, within a family, intergenerationally, and having the older people share their stories with the younger people, because this is the moment to do it. So I invite you all to join the protest. Our first protest was simply making that public statement against racial injustice. And our second effort was to call the mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, and call the governor and the AG's office. AG's office sent me straight into a voicemail, specifically set up for Breonna Taylor's case. When I spoke to the mayor's office, a woman answered, a live woman. She saw my name on the phone. She spoke to me by name. I asked her name. She said, I don't want to give it out. I've been threatened. So the person who's answering the phone, and I told her, my effort is nonviolent and it is peaceful. And I wish no harm on you. I'm sorry for what has happened. I know it's not your fault. And about why is this taking so long? That was in August. The answer they gave me was, that the case is with ballistics. The FBI is doing the ballistics on the case. And now here it is 2 more months later. And we still don't have answers from the ballistics, from the FBI. So the pressure needs to be kept going, and I am devoting more than just 1 day a month to this effort, because I'm doing things in the background whenever I can. But I invite people to participate with us. Share that selfie or share that picture with your family. Just make sure it's someplace where you are safe, and make your statement against racially unjust police brutality. I hope you'll follow the journey, because I am going to celebrate when I get that policy overturned. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. I definitely thank you. And do anybody want to ask our queen any questions or make any comments at this time? Alrighty. Well, my queen, I will definitely put you on with our sister. Her name is Erica. I'll make sure, if it's okay, can I share your information and send it to her directly?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I sure will, and thank you so much for doing what you do, all of the hard work that you're putting into this. I just thank you so much. And I thank you for your time tonight. And
thank you.
Anything else you want to share with me before I bring our next guest on?
No, I'll be back in the future.
Awesome.
So I'll look forward to talking with you again.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to talking to you. Thank you so much. We definitely appreciate you. All right. So moving right on, I'm going to bring our brother Seifu on. He's been living in Baltimore for 6 years. Everybody knows Seifu. I wanted him to run for office, like literally. Like I met him like 6 years ago, and he stood out there. And as we wrap up tonight, we're gonna share a small clip. We shared it last week, but I thought that was real powerful. Like he has no filter. Like he called a spade a spade. He's gonna call it out, and and he's an independent bookseller in the Remington area, and he just does a lot. Like, and I just love the way, like, I always see, like, he lives in City Hall. Like, if something's happening in City Hall, you definitely know he's gonna be there. So no further ado, we're gonna bring our royal king on, Seifu. Mic check.
Mic check.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Mic check. Welcome, Seifu.
Hey, I just want to say briefly, next month will be 6 years of me living in this city, and I cannot talk about my experiences in this city without mentioning Tawanda and without mentioning the West family and the powerful contributions that you've made to the city. So before I even go any further, thank you for making my 6 years a memorable experience here. I want to say that there is the first bad encounter that you have with a cop is always really the only encounter that you're going to have that's going to shape the way that you view cops. It's very rare that you have a second or third encounter that looks different from the first. So like, for example, I've had 3 encounters with cops. The first encounter that I had was I was probably in elementary school. I was visiting my dad here in this city actually, and we were shooting fireworks for the 4th of July at Tillman Elementary. And white cop came up and said, "You can't shoot here. You can't shoot the fireworks here." And my dad was like, "Oh, come on, it's me and my 2 boys. We're not harming anybody. The park, the playground is empty." And the cops took a few steps forward and put their hands on their belt and went, "No, you don't understand. You can't shoot here." And so at that point, you know, as a kid, I'm like, wait a minute, why are you stepping forward? What are you doing? And so basically, long story short, my dad said, you know what, all right, you know, packed up. We ended up going to the backyard to shoot him. The second encounter, which is very interesting, you know, you talked about the sit-in, Love. We actually just remembered the 5-year anniversary of the City Hall sitting that I was a part of, where I and over 12 other people were unfortunately arrested after trying to speak with then Police Commissioner Kevin Davis and then Mayor Stephanie Rollins Blake. And again, that was another encounter with police. And then there was a third encounter with the police, which was very recently, and I haven't shared this with many people, but in January, I was robbed at gunpoint, leaving a coffee shop, 10 o'clock on a Saturday night in Mount Vernon. No one saw anything. No one saw anything. Cops came, wanted me to basically reenact the scene, wanted me to stand where I was standing, and wanted to basically role play, you know, my already traumatic experience. And after I declined, he said, well, you can't leave. I said, what do you mean I can't leave? I said, I'd much rather go home. He said, no, what we need to do now is we need to take you back to the headquarters to file a cathedral in Madison. You got to get in our car, get in our backseat car, drive down to the headquarters, just file for. I said, no. I said, I'm not getting in anybody's car. He said, why? I said, because I didn't do anything. I'm not a criminal. I'm not getting in your car. I'm not getting in your car. He said, so what do you want us to do? I said, well, honestly, your track record, you know, finding people who rob isn't that great. There's probably nothing you can do for me. You know, you can't do anything for me. I said, honestly, I just want to go home. He said, okay, well, you know, if you want to go home, I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. So out of those 3 encounters, I already had in my mind the way that I felt about cops the first encounter as a child. Not even the City Hall sit-in, you know, getting arrested at 3-something in the morning with cops bombarding the barricade area, the balcony area. Not even that. Not even a cop with his gun approaching me after I just had a gun in my side. It wasn't even that. It was me being a kid on a playground shooting fireworks with my father. I don't know where this idea of, you know, protect and serve, I don't know where that came from. I personally haven't seen that written anywhere or any particular documents. But cops are going to do what they are intended to do, which is beat and arrest. Right? There is no, you can't transform this, you can't change this, you can't clean a dirty floor with a filthy mop. All you're going to be doing is spreading the mess, right? You can't fry chicken in a muffin pan. A muffin pan is intended to bake muffins, right? You can't bake a cake in an air fryer, right? It's not intended for that. So we're requesting cops to do something that's not even their job. That's not even what they're set out to do. And so I personally, I don't speak for anybody else. Oh, I don't know where I went there, but I speak for myself where I say that I think we need a completely different system. As long as there is a system predicated on mess, ugliness, nastiness, and murder, you cannot come back from that. So this time of year is my favorite time of year. I love the election time. You know, whether or not you are a voter, I'm just excited to hold our local officials accountable. And I know there's a lot of pressure being put nationally. I know all eyes are on the White House and all eyes are on Donald Trump and Joe Biden, but I'm excited to hold these city council members accountable because these are the people that we're responsible with in this city. And it's a shame that we have Eric Costello, who, in my opinion, is a Republican, right? Who we get by default for another 4 years because he went unopposed, right? I don't think that makes any sense. So, you know, regardless of whether or not you vote, regardless, everybody needs to bring their asses out to the street because we have so much to do. And the greatest irony in all of this, ironies, in my opinion, is that I have had more money in my pocket in a pandemic than I have in a very long time, right? So we're not asking this system to do something that they cannot do, right? What we're asking this system to do is not impossible. It is not something that we cannot have. What I'm asking for is what I can get. What we, the people, are asking for is what we can get because we've seen it. We've seen it happen before. We're not asking for anything. We're not going to bed at night dreaming, you know, laughing to come to fruition. We've seen it happen, but we've only seen it happen in certain situations. What we're saying is that we want what we want, not to be entitled, but because it's ours. But because it's ours, right? And so if we all on unemployment, if we all can get paid to sit at home, let's go out into the streets and put in some real work. And the real work is in the community, in the streets, and I'm very excited to stand with all of you, and that's all I have to say. Thank y'all.
Thank you, my brother. Is there any way that we can support you?
By doing what you're already doing. You know, I feel like everybody's already in some capacity doing organizing work. The best thing that you can do, start off, know your council person, know your district, and move from there, right? We've had 4 years of council members. That's 4 years of something. It might not be a lot, right? You can't compare, for example, the 13th district, Shannon Sneed. You may not be able to do much with her 4 years, but when you look at someone like, Eric Costello, who's been around for a while, or Sharon Green Middleton, right? They have track records. They have things that you can look on and things that you can compare. And so I don't think that what I'm doing or what anyone is doing is impossible. I think collectively as a unit and as a team, we can make this happen. And accountability can happen. And this is a very important time. I mean, the pandemic has this system wiping sweat off of their forehead. I mean, the things that they're doing, a halt of rent, a halt of evictions, these are things that we've been asking for, that people say we can't, that we couldn't have, right? Prisoners being released, right? These are things that we've been asking for, that this system says cannot happen, and it is happening. And so we need to keep the pressure, keep pushing, and let's get the results that we know that we can get.
Right, sounds good to me, my brother.
Oh, one last thing. We don't want revenge. I don't want revenge, right? I'm not trying to swap anything racially. I'm not trying to enslave white people. I'm not trying to impose mass incarceration on white people. I just want freedom and liberation. That's all I want. I'm not trying to turn the tables on anybody. I just want to be left alone. And I want to be able to live in peace and in freedom and dignity. And I want liberation for me and mine. That's all I want.
Nice. I feel you on that, my brother.
And I will do anything to get it.
I know that's right. And thank you again. And I want to thank you too, when you said, and many Doug and Pony show with me and my family seeking accountability. You were there when we had the old man, Catherine Pugh, who sat in our face at that breakfast and tried to tell me that me and my family got accountability. You saw she quickly stopped eating that steak and eggs when I showed her my brother hacked that body, and I told her, does this look like accountability? So I just want to thank you just for being young, full of energy, and bringing that fire and flame. So does anybody want to ask our brother anything? Mic check.
Yeah, Seifu, if you don't mind, can you tell the story of the sit-in at City Hall in a little more detail and what it was fighting for?
Yes. So they were voting Kevin Davis in to be the new police commissioner, and the youth felt that their vote had not been counted for. That we were hearing from a lot of adults, a lot of the older people, but there are young people who live in this city and have to live with the consequences that comes out of City Hall via votes. And so what that meeting was, or better yet, the way that we responded to that meeting was to say, look, you have younger people in here who live in this city and have to live with the consequences of this vote, and that their voices should be heard as well. And so when we realized that our voices would not be heard, we took over the meeting, and rightfully so. They did the votes in private. They had the council members write the votes down because they couldn't even hear. I mean, we were so loud in there that they had to go one by one and write it down because we had completely taken over the meeting. We said we wanted to meet with the mayor and Kevin Davis to talk about a plan that is cohesive and conducive to our needs as young Black people in this city. We said that we would even sit in City Hall until they showed up. They tried to say they didn't know where the mayor was. They didn't know, where she was or what she was doing at that particular moment. I said, well, look, you've got Kevin Davis in this very building. He's already in City Hall. Bring him upstairs. We'll talk to him. Well, no, that's not, we can't do that. Running around, dog and pony show as usual. So we said, you know what? We're going to stay right here on this balcony anywhere until you get the mayor and the police commissioner in this building and meet with us. We're not playing with y'all. We're tired of playing games. We're sick and tired of it. We're tired of being ignored because of our age. We're not doing it any longer. We're going to sleep here tonight. And that's what we did. And so we sat. They cut the power off. They cut the lights off. They turned off the electrical outlets at one point. Pizza was ordered for us, and to my understanding, the pizza never made it up to our floor. Apparently, the pigs ate it. The pigs got hungry and ate it. And we stayed there. We made a decision to stay, and at about between 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning, cops came in and arrested us. But that was a decision that we made because we knew that we were not going to leave unless we were handcuffed because we were tired of playing games.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Anybody else want to ask or give a comment to our brother? Say food. Alrighty, well, thank you, my brother. Hopefully you'll stay in queue because after we wrap up, after we get our sad report from Brother Brian, if he has one, then we'll get followed up list police brutality from Uncle Bill, then we'll be ready to wrap up. And then also, real quick, I want to remind everybody, I don't know if you guys know, but tomorrow is National Day Against Police Brutality, and I'm going to be on a very important Zoom call with the uncle of Oscar Grant. He's going to be at the Oscar Grant Plaza, but because we're in these COVID times, we're not going to be there in person. We're going to be there on Zoom, and I hope it's going to be, I think it's probably going to be live. I'll share it on my page if it's recorded live, but Oscar Grant case reopened, and you guys know we're trying to work on getting all the cases reopened. Just like my sister Ishtime says, every case matters, not just the one on the national level, but every case matters. But he invited me to basically testify and tell what happened to my brother in my journey, so I will be there in queue tomorrow, 7 o'clock our time, and 4 o'clock their time. So I'll be sharing that with you as well. So, Brian, is Brian still in queue? Brian, do you have that same?
Yeah, I'm here.
List? All right,
Yeah, I'm here.
My brother Brian reads these names off. These are real people that once was, but is not anymore. Only thing they are now is a memory. And it's just really sad having great memories of my own brother. You can't take that away. You might have physically took him away from us, but I'm spiritually still connected to my brother in every aspect of the word. And just saying, and I also wanted to give a shout out to any and everybody that's fighting cancer because it's ugly, it's real, and I can't believe that a year just passed from losing our uncle through his horrible fight of cancer, whereas though cancer plays so many games, like we went through a time with my uncle Clifton Anderson that he was doing so great. Like he was like, first it started off, he was doing really bad and it knocked him off his feet. But then as he went into remission stage and whatnot, he fought that thing and then he was loving because he used to be dark skinned and then he went through this transition, I guess, from the chemo treatment and he was like as light as me and he was like, I like being light skinned, like he was real light. And we were like, oh my goodness, and then he went back. But this is like the uncle, like I love everybody in my family, but with him, he's in a moment. But he's the reason that I became the teacher because of the stories of him talking, bringing my family together and pulling us together as little kids and reading funny stories to us and sharing and being real funny. He brought that side out of me and I just wanted to share with children, and that's why I went to school and things like that to achieve my dream of giving back to children and things like that. And every time I tell a story, like I told my class today, a scary story, I thought about my uncle because I used to love Uncle Dynamite's story. We called him Dynamite because he always like brought the fire and the flame, but he was like the fun uncle. Like he always took us on the back of his truck
to go like on rides, and then he would act like he was scared us, like the truck would break down in the woods somewhere. He'll jump out, then he'll come back. And one time, I remember he showed up. I think it was like the year before last. He showed up at my house, and he had this mask. It was a Caucasian face mask. It was so funny. And he came in, and I was gonna scare my son, and it was a joke that went bad. And what had happened was that I said it was like one of my neighbors had got in my house, and I didn't know Barry was listening, and Barry ran downstairs, and it was just so funny. Mom said, "Hey, you almost got me beat down." And it was just so funny. So like memories you can't take away, and I'm starting to rant and raving, but I just went off. But as Brother Brown read these names, remember, these people that you hear about, they got stories and dreams that were actually cut. Just murder is murder. Like dreams have been cut, just wiped out, and that person family is left to pick up all that pain and strife and to actually move on in a society that says, hey, your grieving means nothing. You have to pay your debts and dues, go to work and keep it precious. So remember, when you hear every name, please just look at it as if it was one of your loved ones, because it can easily be one of our loved ones. And I believe that we're all united as sisters and brothers, regardless of our race, background, or anything. I believe that we're all connected, we're all human beings, and my heart goes out to all these families that are suffering this type of trauma, just being traumatized in the blink of an eye. So, no further ado, check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Yeah, thank you, Tawanda. I'm gonna keep it quiet or keep it short here because I'm kind of outside and so somebody might drive by and nobody needs that over Zoom. But I do want to just repeat and bear witness what Tawanda said. You know, in the Jewish tradition, they say that if you save a life, it's like saving the entire world. And so when you take a life, it's also like destroying the entire world. And so I'm going to try and read out these names. This week there were 4 murder victims in Baltimore. 4 people lost to the empire of violence. And 2 of them I don't have names for yet, but 2 of them I do, so I'd ask you to echo those back to me. Those are Nayali Paz, 18.
Nayali Paz, 18.
18.
And Dion Brown, 19.
Dion Brown, 19.
Dion
Brown.
19.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, my heart goes out to these family members, loved ones, anybody. And at the end of the day, even people that survived through this trauma, like, you don't have to just die and be murdered. Like, you could be gunned down, you're still changed forever. So my heart goes out. And now we're going to bring our Uncle Bill in with his list of police terrorism. Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Tawanda, I have a question for you. Last time we read the names and honored people that were killed by police around the country up through October the 4th. So if you like, we can read people who lost their lives to police violence in the last 2 weeks. It's quite a few people, or we could just do the most recent week.
You can do the 2 weeks. Is everybody good on time? Because I just don't want nobody's name to be missed out. Like, this is real important. And it's just saying, the reason why it's real important to me, because, like I said, everything don't make the news. So we don't, like, these names that you're saying, like, I don't even hear about it on the news. You get what I'm saying? So, again, I'll echo every case matters. So I think that their case matters enough for you to read the names out. We do our, repeated the names type of thing out our shape.
Okay. I'll just mention the information comes from a site called killedbypolice.net. And for each case, it includes a link, so you can go and read a newspaper article from the city where it occurred if you'd like to know more. So we're starting with October the 5th. And killed by police in California, 47 years old. If you could repeat the name to honor him, Juan Adrian Garcia.
Adrian Garcia.
Adrian Garcia.
The next day, on October the 6th, there were 3 people whose lives were taken by police. In Kentucky, at 44 years old, we should honor Chester McDonald.
Chester McDonald.
In North Carolina, 62 years old, John Hare.
John Hare.
In Florida, Crystal Renee Starling McClinton, 48.
Crystal Renee Starling McClinton.
You did well with that name. On the 8th of October, 3 people whose lives were taken by police in Pennsylvania, 29 years old, Stanley Cochran.
Stanley Cochran.
In New York, 24 years old, Hiram Dent.
Byron Dent.
In Florida, 47 years old, Justin Caldwell.
Justin Caldwell.
On the following day, on the 9th, and I think 4 people lost their lives to police violence. The first in South Carolina, Sylvia Kirchner.
Sylvia Kirchner.
In Minnesota, Anthony Legato.
Anthony Legato.
KS, is that Kansas?
Yes.
Okay, in Kansas, 29 years old, Callan Haraker.
Callan Haraker.
On the 9th of October, in Texas, at 29 years old, taken by police violence, Ariel Lujan.
Ariel Lujan.
On the 10th of October, in California, 21 years old, taken by police violence, Cesar Vargas.
Cesar Vargas.
In Montana on the 12th of October, 29 years old, Cole Stump.
Cole Stump.
Also on that day in Tennessee, 24 years old, taken by police violence, Anthony Jones.
Anthony Jones.
The following day, on the 13th, in California, 27 years old, also taken by police violence, Jose Ramirez.
Jose Ramirez.
On the 14th, there were 5 people taken by police violence. The first person in California, was not identified. In Florida, 38 years old, Yoel Santel.
Yoel Santel.
On that day in California, there was someone who was not yet identified. Also in California, another person, 30 years old, Stephen Best.
Stephen Best.
And in Oklahoma on the same day, another person who has not yet been identified. On the 16th of October, the first person was in Iowa, was not yet identified. In Alabama, 57-year-old Alberto Rivas.
Alberto Rivas.
In California, in California, 25 years old, on the same day, Fred Williams.
Fred Williams.
And the same day, once again, in Illinois, 27 years old, Akbar Edie.
Akbar Edie.
On the 17th, there were 3 people killed by police, and they were in New Mexico and Kentucky, but have not been identified. The third was in West Virginia, 21 years old, Paul Bailey.
Paul Bailey.
On the 18th, in Florida, someone who was not yet identified. In California, 32 years old, Gregory Putnick. On the same day, on the same day in Utah, 37 years old, taken by police. I'm not sure I know how to pronounce the name properly. Tutuila Kunwayu. Tutuila Kunwayu. Kunwayu. Very good. I think you said it better than I. On the 19th, the first person is from Wisconsin, 43 years old, but has not been identified. The second person on the 96 years old, Paul Solkowski.
Paul Solkowski.
And the final person on the 19th has not been identified, but was killed by the police in Maryland. So I hope that we will find out who that is and pay a little more attention to that case. Last thing I want to mention is that for those watching tonight who don't know, our focus right now is to push for the prosecution of Jorge, but was one of the 2 people that initiated the attack on Tyrone West and took his life. And we know of 5 other cases where he engaged in home invasions, brutality, racial profiling, and assault. And you may have seen the video at the beginning of the program about all of that. We're pushing to insist that the city state's attorney, Marilyn Mosby, open up a case and prosecute him seriously. He belongs off the street, off the force, and behind bars. And the last thing I want to say, these struggles take a long time, as has been said, and we should remember what the Chinese communists used to say: dare to struggle, dare to win, never give up.
Thank you so much, Uncle Bill. Well said, well said. And he's absolutely right. That's exactly what we're pushing for. And we'll be doing like different demonstrations and action. We also now have a face mask campaign going on. So just keep an ear out when we send you a face mask. If you could recommend somebody that we should, you know, put on our list, please feel free to share that.
What we're not going to do.
Again, I want to thank each and every last one of you guys for taking the time out. We ran over a little bit, but it's all right, because at the end of the day, we are trying to get something accomplished, and that's to stop this police brutality, to stop this community violence, to stop anything that's not right. So moving forward, I want to thank you guys again. I want to thank each and every last guest. I want to thank Miss Cheryl Crockett. I want to thank our sister Erica. I want to thank Seifu. I want to thank our brother Ken that always bring the fire. And I want to give a special shout out to Mickey. He did an exclusive interview this week. I can't think of the person's name, but it was somebody famous, and he did an excellent job. So I just love shouting people out just doing amazing work. So again, thank you. And as we get these little short videos of all the speakers, I'll make sure I share them. The only thing I'm asking you to do is to share the video. That's all you gotta do, is hit the share button, and as you're post, just say, please share, watch and share. That's all I'm asking you.
And a shout out to Tawanda too.
Thank you.
Always.
Thank you, and thank everybody. As I always say, live to love, love to live, and we will see you guys next week. And you guys will be watching my page tomorrow, hopefully, and I'll share the interview with Uncle Bobby, Oscar Grant Uncle. So we're gonna take you out with our brother Seifu when he was going off, and you just gotta watch it. So it's only a 2.5 minute video. It's not like the first 10-minute video, but again, thank everybody. I love the whole West Coalition. We are family. Thank you guys for watching. We love you. Virtual hug. Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Check.
This video is from West Wednesday, number 119.
Service announcement. There are 10 to 12 pigs that escaped the cage. 10 to 12 pigs that escaped the pig. It has been 19 weeks. 119 weeks. And the wound is still fresh. Yes, brother. Fresh. Like it just happened. Like it just happened yesterday. I was just at City Hall this afternoon. And we were there for a hearing. And the hearing was to introduce a bill that would require police officers to publicly destroy confiscated drugs and weapons. Because they're saying that these weapons and these drugs are destroyed when they get them, but don't nobody watch it happen. And so me and 3 other people went in there, and we said we want to see who in the heck is destroying these weapons. Because as far as I'm concerned, your dirty dogs is putting them back out on the street. Back out on the street. Them same drugs, them same guns, back out on the street. Like dogs. And if you ain't dead, you're in jail, and you got what? The prison industrial complex. That's right. When you go to jail, they got people making your clothes and your shoes. There ain't no Santa Claus might not be real, but there's elves. There are slaves fixing our clothes. And if you ain't in jail, you're dead, and then yes, they're taking your organs. I have been over West all the time. I haven't seen a gun store. I haven't seen any weed place. Nothing. Where are these things coming from? Who is killing our people? They are killing us. I am 20 years old. I am young, and I am far from tired, and I am fed up with this, and I ain't going nowhere until killer cops is in cell blocks. And I don't have to be a victim to feel the pain. I don't have to be a victim. You don't have to be a victim. But I know, and then they got the nerve to justify that girl getting slammed on the ground in her desk in class. Well, if that's the punishment for not listening, what happens to you when you run a red light? You get tased? Unacceptable.
That's right. Unacceptable. That's right.
So I'ma be here. You don't have to worry about nobody not being here, even if it's just us, and we huddle up together like a bunch of black people, and we make some fire, we're gonna be out here. Because enough is enough of this. And I ain't gonna take it no more.